Tonight, we seek the lost golden glow of the amber room, a treasure of kings swallowed by the shadows of history. But first, come in from the cold. Leave the restless world at the door and step into the warmth of our library. You are safe here. The fire is dying down to embers, and the candlelight is soft, just for you. The book for this tale is already waiting, bound in heavy weathered leather, the pages smelling of ancient pine and sun-warmed resin. Let us open it together. Our story of the Amber Room begins. The world beyond the heavy oak doors of the Berlin City Palace has fallen into a deep and heavy silence. It is a night in the very earliest years of the 18th century, perhaps the year 1701, and the air within these stone walls carries the chill of a Prussian winter. But inside the private sanctuary of Andreas Schlüter, the master sculptor and architect to the king, there is a warmth that does not come from the fireplace alone. The fire in the hearth has burned down to a collection of glowing embers, casting a soft and rhythmic orange light against the high vaulted ceiling, making the shadows of the statues dance like ghosts of unfinished ideas. Schlüter sits at his desk, his back slightly curved under the weight of a vision that has begun to consume his every waking thought. His hands, though calloused and etched with the fine lines of a man who has spent a lifetime wrestling with marble and stone, are now cradling something far more delicate. In the hollow of his palm lies a single piece of raw amber, a small, unpolished nugget, the color of a setting sun. As he turns the stone over in his fingers, the silence of the room is punctuated only by the soft, rhythmic rasp of a fine file. He is not working on a grand scale tonight. He is seeking to understand the soul of a material that is neither wood nor stone, but something caught between the two. As the metal edge of his tool grazes the surface of the amber, a fine golden cloud of dust rises into the air. It is so light, so ethereal, that it seems to hang suspended in the candlelight, swirling in the slow currents of his breath. This dust is the very essence of the dream. It coats his fingertips in a velvet powder, and as he leans closer, the scent of it fills his senses. It is a smell that defies simple description. It is the scent of 30 million years of stillness. It is a deep, resinous perfume, reminiscent of ancient pine forests that have long since been swallowed by the sea. It carries a hint of burnt honey, a touch of musk, and a strange, sharp sweetness that tickles the back of the throat. To Schlüter, this smell is the fragrance of time itself, captured and preserved in a golden tomb. He closes his eyes and lets the powder settle on his skin, imagining the entire palace transformed by this scent, a sanctuary where the very walls breathe the perfume of a forgotten world. This vision travels from the quiet rooms of Berlin to the bustling, salty air of the city of Danzig. In the year 1702, The dream moves into the workshops of the master amber craftsman, where the selection process begins in earnest. Imagine a room filled with the low, steady hum of activity, situated near the docks where the Baltic Sea whispers against the wooden piers. Here, the air is thick with a different mixture of smells, the sharp tang of salt water, the dampness of the harbour mist, and the overpowering, sweet aroma of raw resin. Great willow baskets are lined up against the stone walls, overflowing with thousands upon thousands of amber nuggets, recently harvested from the cold, churning waters. The master craftsmen, men like Gottfried Thurau and Ernest Schacht, move through the room with a deliberate, prayerful slowness. They do not merely look at the stones, they listen to them. They feel their weight. They hold them up to the pale northern light that filters through the high, narrow windows. The selection of these pieces is a task of infinite patience and sensory precision. One by one, those honeyed lumps of gold are poured onto long wooden tables. The sound they make is like the clattering of dry seeds or the rattling of ancient bones, a soft, percussive music that fills the workshop. The craftsmen run their fingers through the piles, seeking out the perfect specimens. There are pieces the color of thick, opaque cream, which will be carved into delicate floral reliefs. There are transparent shards, as clear as a bottle of fine cognac, which will act as windows into the deeper layers of the mosaic. Some stones are the deep bruised red of a winter cherry, while others possess a pale, buttery glow. Each piece is felt for its density and its warmth. As they work, the craftsman's hands become polished by the stones themselves, their skin absorbing the natural oils of the resin until their fingers glow with a faint, translucent sheen. The selection is a slow, meditative dance. 1,000 stones might be rejected for every one that is deemed worthy to be part of the king's room. They look for the inner fire, the way the light gets trapped within the stone and refuses to let go. Back in the Berlin city palace, the first stage of the grand assembly begins to take shape. The air in the designated gallery is heavy with the smell of fresh timber and the pungent, vinegary scent of the specialized glues. The walls have been prepared with elaborate wooden frameworks, skeletons of oak and pine that will support the weight of the golden treasure. The first panels arrive from Danzig, packed carefully in crates of soft wool and sawdust to protect their fragile surfaces. As the master builders begin to mount the first sections, the room is filled with the quiet, rhythmic sounds of construction, the soft tap of small hammers, the sliding of wooden joints, and the hushed murmurs of the architects as they consult the drawings of Andreas Schluter. The assembly is a feat of engineering as much as it is an act of art. Each panel must fit perfectly against its neighbor, creating the illusion of a solid, shimmering wall of stone. As the first corner of the room is finished, The effect is nothing short of miraculous. When the sun dips low in the sky, its final rays strike the amber, and the room seems to ignite. The walls do not merely reflect the light, they drink it in. The golden surfaces begin to glow from within, casting a soft, warm radiance that fills the entire gallery. The scent of the amber, warmed by the afternoon sun, rises from the walls in invisible waves, filling the lungs of everyone present with that ancient, resinous perfume. It is as if the palace has developed a soul. The king, Frederick I, stands in the center of the unfinished room, his footsteps echoing softly on the stone floor. He reaches out a hand, his fingers hesitating before they finally touch the surface of a finished panel. The amber is warm to the touch, alive with a static energy that seems to hum beneath his skin. In this moment, the transition from a sculptor's solitary dream to a physical reality is complete. The room is no longer just a collection of stone and wood. It has become a vessel for light and time. The shadows in the corners are not dark, but a deep, rich umber, softened by the glow of the amber walls. Every detail, from the minute carvings of the Prussian eagle to the sprawling floral patterns, has been executed with a precision that defies the brittle nature of the material. The quiet sound of the wind outside the palace windows seems distant and unimportant. Inside this chamber, there is only the stillness of the golden forest. The first assembly in Berlin is a testament to the obsession of the men who built it, a monument to a material that was once a liquid tear and has now become the crowning glory of a kingdom. The air is still, the light is golden, and the scent of 30 million years of history hangs heavy and sweet in the air, a whisper of the ancient world held captive within the walls of a modern palace. The air in the year 1716 is thick with the scent of damp wool, heavy wood smoke, and the biting frost of a Brandenburg winter. We find ourselves in the heart of Prussia, where the architecture is as stern and disciplined as the soldiers who guard its corridors. King Frederick William I, known to history as the Soldier King, moves through his palace with a brisk, no-nonsense gait, his boots clicking rhythmically against the cold stone floors. He is a man of practicalities, a man who finds beauty in the straight lines of a battalion and the precision of a well-oiled musket. But on this particular winter day, the atmosphere within the royal residence is charged with a different kind of energy, a tension born of high diplomacy and the arrival of a guest who is larger than life itself. Peter the Great, the Tsar of all the Russias, has arrived, and his presence seems to stretch the very limits of the rooms he inhabits. He is a giant of a man, both in stature and in spirit, with eyes that burn with a restless, insatiable curiosity about the world and how it works. As the two monarchs meet, the contrast between them is palpable. Frederick William I is dressed in his simple dark blue uniform, smelling of the strong tobacco he favors and the faint metallic tang of gun oil. Peter, though often informal himself, carries with him the scent of the sea, of tarred rope and salt spray, mingled with the expensive spices of his distant court. They stand together in a high-ceilinged hall where the fire in the great hearth roars in a futile attempt to push back the encroaching chill. The sound of the wind howling around the palace eaves is like a low, mournful cello, providing a backdrop to the hushed, guttural tones of their conversation. They speak of alliances, of the shifting borders of Europe, and of their mutual enemy, the Swedish Empire. But beneath the talk of war and politics, there is a growing sense of mutual admiration, a recognition of two souls who are both, in their own ways, carving new worlds out of the old. It is during this visit that the Tsar is led into the chamber that Andreas Schluter began, and that Frederick I so dearly loved. As the heavy doors are pushed open, the transition is startling. They leave behind the grey, utilitarian world of the Prussian court and step into a space that feels as though it has been carved from the very heart of the sun. Peter the Great stops in his tracks, his breath hitching in his chest. The amber room, even in its partially finished state, is a revelation. In the dim light of the afternoon, the amber panels seem to glow with an inner fire, casting a warm, honeyed radiance across the Tsar's weathered features. The scent here is different too. It is the deep, resinous perfume we know so well, a fragrance of ancient forests and sun-drenched resin that seems to coat the back of the throat with a sweet, balsamic warmth. Peter reaches out a massive, calloused hand, his fingers trembling slightly as they hover over a particularly intricate carving of a floral garland. He can feel the heat radiating from the stone, a static, living warmth that defies the winter outside. In that moment, the room is no longer just a collection of decorative panels. It is a symbol of everything Peter desires for his own burgeoning empire: beauty, craftsmanship, and a sense of timeless majesty. Frederick William I, watching the Tsar's genuine wonder, sees an opportunity. To the soldier king, the amber room is a luxury he can ill afford to maintain, a fragile, temperamental treasure that does not fit with his vision of a lean and militarized Prussia. He values men over mosaics, and he knows that Peter possesses something he desires even more than golden walls. The Tsar has a regiment of exceptionally tall soldiers, the giants of the East, who would be the perfect addition to Frederick William's own beloved Potsdam giants. A silent agreement begins to form in the golden light of the room, a pact sealed not just with ink and parchment, but with the shared appreciation of the amber's glow. This is diplomacy at its most intimate, a gift of sovereigns that will change the course of history. The amber room will be given to Peter the Great, a gesture of friendship and a seal of their alliance against the North. The decision is made, and the quiet sanctity of the room is soon replaced by the purposeful, rhythmic sounds of a different kind of labor. The task of dismantling the treasure is entrusted to the most careful of hands, for the amber is as brittle as it is beautiful. The air in the gallery becomes thick with the smell of dry straw and the earthy raw scent of freshly sawn oak. 18 great crates, fashioned from the sturdiest Prussian timber, are brought into the room. They stand like silent sentinels, waiting to swallow the golden walls. You can hear the soft metallic rasp of screwdrivers and the gentle prying of wooden joints as each panel is carefully detached from the framework. The craftsmen work in near silence, their breath visible in the cold air, their movements slow and deliberate to avoid any sudden shock that might shatter the ancient resin. As each piece is lowered from the wall, it is wrapped in layers of soft, unspun wool and thick, protective felt. The texture of the wool is scratchy and warm, a stark contrast to the smooth, glass-like surface of the amber. The craftsmen then nestle the wrapped panels into beds of fine wood shavings and dried moss, ensuring that no two surfaces can touch. The sound of the straw rustling as it is packed tight is like the sound of 1,000 tiny footsteps. There is a profound sense of loss in the room as the golden walls slowly disappear, revealing the cold grey masonry underneath. The scent of the amber begins to fade, masked by the dominant smell of the oak crates and the dust kicked up by the workmen. One by one, the 18 crates are filled. The weight of them is immense, requiring teams of strong men to slide them across the floors. The sound of the heavy crates dragging against the stone is a low, grinding moan that echoes through the empty gallery. Each crate is numbered and sealed with heavy iron bands, the hammers falling with a final echoing thud. 1716 marks the end of the room's residence in Berlin. The 18 oak boxes are lined up in the courtyard, looking unremarkable and heavy under the grey Prussian sky. They hold within them a dream of gold, 30 million years of history compressed into 18 wooden hearts. The smell of the damp earth and the impending snow hangs over the courtyard as the crates are loaded onto heavy sledges. The horses stamp their hooves, their breath blooming in the air like white ghosts as they prepare for the long, arduous journey toward the east, toward the new city of Saint Petersburg that Peter is building on the edge of the world. The gallery in the Berlin palace is left empty and silent. The warmth has departed, leaving only the smell of cold stone and the faint, lingering memory of the resin. The soldier king has his giants, and the Tsar has his treasure. As the sledges creak out of the palace gates, the sound of their runners on the frozen ground is a sharp, lonely whistle. The amber is leaving its home, beginning a journey across frozen plains and through dark forests, tucked away in the darkness of the 18 oak crates. It is a gift of sovereigns, a piece of the sun being sent into the heart of the Russian winter, and as the distance between the crates and the palace grows, the silence in the empty room becomes absolute. The first chapter of the room's life has closed, and the long, cold road to the east lies ahead, a journey through the frost and the shadows, where the golden light will remain hidden until it can find a new place to shine. The year 1716 stretches out across the vast white silence of the northern plains, a world transformed into a crystalline desert where the horizon has vanished into a blur of silver and frost. The 18 oak crates, heavy with their golden cargo, are no longer stationary objects in a palace courtyard. They have become part of a rhythmic, slow-moving caravan, a line of heavy sledges cutting a path through the deep, untouched snow. The sound of the journey is a symphony of winter, dominated by the constant rhythmic hiss of the iron-shod runners sliding over the frozen crust. It is a sound like a long, drawn-out secret being whispered by the earth itself. Every few moments, the silence is punctuated by the sharp, metallic jingle of the harness bells, a high and lonely music that hangs in the frigid air long after the horses have passed. These bells are not merely for decoration. They are a constant heartbeat, a signal to the wilderness that the treasures of a king are passing through the shadows of the pines. The air here is so cold that it feels sharp, like 1,000 invisible needles pressing against the skin. It carries the scent of absolute purity, the metallic tang of deep ice, and the faint, bracing aroma of crushed pine needles where the sledges have brushed against the encroaching forest. Occasionally, a gust of wind carries the distant bitter smell of wood smoke from a peasant's hearth, miles away across the drifts, a reminder of a world that is warm and lived in. But here, on the trail to Saint Petersburg, there is only the biting wind and the endless white. The men guarding the crates are bundled in heavy furs that smell of damp earth and old musk, their breath blooming in the air like thick white ghosts that vanish as quickly as they appear. They move with a slow, deliberate heaviness, their boots crunching into the snow with a sound like breaking glass. They look at the 18 oak boxes with a mixture of reverence and exhaustion, knowing that within those sturdy walls lies a light that belongs to a different world entirely. Inside the crates, the amber rests in its bed of straw and wool, oblivious to the freezing temperatures. But even through the thick timber and the layers of protection, the spirit of the resin seems to exert a strange influence. The guards tell stories in hushed voices during their brief nocturnal stops, claiming that they can feel a faint warmth emanating from the wood, a phantom heat that keeps the worst of the frost at bay. The sound of the wind howling through the skeletal branches of the birch trees is like a mournful choir, a sound that would be terrifying if not for the steady, reassuring presence of the caravan. The journey is a test of endurance, a slow crawl through a landscape that seems to have no beginning and no end. Day after day, The sun rises as a pale, heatless disk in the milky sky, casting long blue shadows across the drifts, and day after day the sledges continue their rhythmic glide toward the east. The constant vibration of the runners sends a subtle tremor through the crates, a low hum that vibrates in the bones of the men who ride upon them. It is as if the amber is singing a low, ancient song to the ice, a reminder of the sun that created it 30 million years ago. As the caravan finally approaches the outskirts of the new city of Saint Petersburg, the atmosphere begins to change. The wild, untamed scent of the forest gives way to the more complex aromas of a city in the making. There is the smell of freshly cut timber, the sharp odor of coal fires, and the briny, salt-heavy breath of the Gulf of Finland. The summer palace of Peter I stands as a beacon of order amidst the chaos of construction, its windows reflecting the dying light of a winter afternoon. The arrival of the 18 crates is met with a hushed intensity. There is no grand celebration yet, only the quiet, efficient work of unloading. The heavy oak boxes are carried into the palace, their weight causing the floorboards to groan in protest. The sound of the sledges departing, their bells fading into the distance, marks the end of the long, frozen trek. The journey through the white desert is over, and the treasure has reached its new home, tucked away in the heart of a Russian winter, waiting for the moment it will be unveiled. The interior of the summer palace is a labyrinth of shadows and flickering candlelight, a place where the air is still and heavy with the scent of beeswax and old stone. It is the first night of the amber's arrival, and the palace is filled with an anticipatory silence. Outside, the Neva River is a solid ribbon of ice, but inside, the preparations for the first unpacking are underway. Tsar Peter I cannot wait for the morning. He moves through the darkened halls with a heavy, restless energy, his footsteps echoing against the high ceilings. He carries a single silver candelabra, the flames dancing and guttering in the draughts that snake through the corridors. He enters the room where the 18 crates have been placed, their dark shapes looking like ancient sarcophagi in the gloom. The smell of the room is dominated by the damp, earthy scent of the oak and the dry, dusty aroma of the straw that has travelled hundreds of miles. The Tsar signals to his most trusted craftsmen, and the work of opening the first crate begins. The sound of the crowbar prying at the lid is a sharp, agonizing crack that shatters the stillness of the palace. It is followed by the rhythmic rasp of nails being pulled from the wood. As the lid is lifted, a cloud of fine dust and tiny fragments of straw rises into the air, swirling in the candlelight. And then it happens. The first layer of wool is pulled back, and the scent of the amber, long suppressed by the cold and the dark, rushes out like a physical force. It is a concentrated burst of that ancient, resinous perfume, a smell of sun-drenched forests and warm honey that seems to push back the chill of the Russian night. Peter leans forward, the light of his candles reflecting in his wide, dark eyes. He reaches into the crate, his large hands sinking into the soft, scratchy wool until they touch the smooth, glass-like surface of the first panel. As he lifts the piece of amber into the light, it is as if he is holding a fragment of the sun itself. The candlelight penetrates the translucent stone, illuminating the deep oranges, the pale yellows, and the rich cognac browns of the mosaic. The room is suddenly filled with a warm, golden radiance that softens the harsh lines of the crates and the stone walls. The sound of the straw rustling as more panels are revealed is like the sound of dry autumn leaves, a gentle, soothing whisper. The craftsmen work in a trance-like state, their movements slowed by the sheer beauty of the material. They handle each piece as if it were a living thing, feeling the static warmth that seems to pulse within the resin. The scent of the amber becomes even more intense, filling the room until it feels as though they are standing in the heart of a great golden hive. Peter I stands in the center of the room, surrounded by the growing piles of golden panels. He looks at the intricate carvings, the delicate floral motifs, and the majestic Prussian eagles, all rendered in the warm, glowing stone. The contrast between the dark, frozen world outside and the radiant heat of the amber is overwhelming. It is as if they have managed to capture a piece of summer and transport it into the deepest part of the winter. The Tsar runs his thumb over a smooth, polished section of the stone, feeling the weight of millions of years of history. The palace is silent now, save for the soft crackle of the candles and the steady rhythmic breathing of the men. They are all caught in the spell of the amber, mesmerized by its inner light and its ancient, comforting scent. As the hours of the night slip away, more and more of the treasure is revealed. The floor is covered in a sea of straw and discarded wool, but the walls of the room are beginning to disappear behind the golden panels that have been propped against them. The light in the room is unlike anything the Tsar has ever seen. It is a light that does not merely illuminate but transforms. It turns the shadows into pools of deep amber and the dust motes into drifting sparks of gold. The scent of the resin has seeped into the very tapestries of the room, creating an atmosphere that is both regal and primordial. Peter knows that this is only the beginning. The room will eventually be moved, expanded, and perfected. But this first night, this first moment of unpacking the sun in the heart of winter, will remain etched in his memory. The first grey light of dawn begins to filter through the palace windows, turning the ice on the Neva into a sheet of polished steel. But inside the room, the golden glow remains undiminished. The craftsmen finally step back, their hands stained with the dust of the straw and the oil of the amber. They are exhausted, but their eyes are bright with wonder. The 18 oak crates now stand empty, their purpose fulfilled. The treasure has been liberated from its wooden prison, and the air in the summer palace is alive with the promise of a new golden age. Peter I stands alone for a moment, the scent of the amber clinging to his clothes and his hair, a golden whisper in the cold Russian morning. He has brought the light of the West to the frozen East, and the world will never be the same. The years have flowed like the very resin that forms the heart of our story, and now we find ourselves in the middle of the 18th century, in a Russia that is breathing with a new, exuberant life. The era of Empress Elizabeth I has dawned, and with it comes a passion for a beauty so profound that it borders on the celestial. Elizabeth, the daughter of Peter the Great, has inherited her father's love for the amber treasure, but she possesses a soul that craves even more splendor, more height, and a magnificence that reflects the boundless reaches of her empire. The air in her presence is always a delicate composition of expensive French perfumes, the soft scent of lavender and musk clinging to her voluminous silk gowns. You can hear the rhythmic, heavy rustle of those silks as she moves through the corridors of her palace, a sound like a quiet tide receding over a pebbled shore. But even in the midst of all this luxury, the original amber room feels too small, too modest for the grand architectural visions she holds in her heart. To realize her dream, she turns to her favorite architect, the brilliant Bartolomeo Rastrelli. Imagine him in his sun-drenched studio, the air thick with the smell of wet plaster, linseed oil, and the sharp, woody scent of cedar pencils. Rastrelli is a man of the Italian Baroque, a master of curves, shadows, and light, and he views the amber room not as a finished work, but as a seed that is yet to fully bloom. He looks at the original panels from Berlin and realizes they are not enough to cover the vast, soaring walls of the new spaces the Empress has commissioned. He begins to sketch, his charcoal scratching against the heavy paper with a dry, rhythmic sound. His solution is one of pure genius and breathtaking audacity. He decides to expand the golden walls by weaving them together with elements that will elevate the amber to a new, ethereal plane. He introduces intricate carvings of gilded wood, floral garlands that seem to grow from the very masonry, and 4 magnificent Florentine mosaics made of semi-precious stones that represent the 5 senses. The smell of fresh gilding, that metallic and slightly sweet aroma of gold leaf being applied with a rabbit hairbrush, becomes a permanent fixture in the workshop. Each thin sheet of gold is so delicate that the mere breath of a craftsman causes it to shiver and dance before it is pressed into place. As Rastrelli and his team of master carvers work, the room begins to transform into a symphony of textures. You have the smooth, warm, ancient glass of the amber, the rougher, brilliant texture of the gilded wood, and the cool, hard precision of the jasper and onyx in the mosaics. The craftsmen move with a slow, meditative grace, their hands covered in a fine dust of gold and stone, their voices kept to a hushed whisper out of respect for the masterpiece taking shape. Elizabeth herself often visits the workspace, the scent of her jasmine perfume mingling with the resinous aroma of the amber. She watches as the new pieces are fitted, her eyes bright with the same fire that once drove her father. This is the expansion of a legacy, a bridge between the Prussian alchemist's dream and the Russian Empress's reality. The room is no longer a collection of panels. It is becoming a living, breathing environment of light. But the true magic of Rastrelli's vision lies in the way he handles the intangible. He understands that for the amber to truly sing, it needs a partner, a way to multiply its radiance until it fills the soul of the observer. He introduces the great mirrors. These are not the small, clouded mirrors of the past, but vast, crystal-clear expanses of silvered glass that stretch from the floor toward the high, painted ceilings. As the sun begins to set over the Russian landscape, and the first of the footmen move through the chamber to light the candles, the room undergoes a transformation that defies description. Imagine the sound of 100 matches striking, the tiny sharp hiss followed by the soft, warm scent of burning beeswax. There are hundreds upon hundreds of candles, held in gilded sconces that branches out like the arms of a golden tree. As each wick catches fire, the light hits the faceted surfaces of the amber and then leaps into the mirrors. The mirrors do not merely reflect, they create a world of infinite depth. One candle becomes 2, then 4, then 1,000, until the room is no longer a physical space but a sea of flickering gold. The light bounces from the mirrors back onto the amber, sinking deep into the translucent resin before being thrown back out again, warmed and enriched by the 30-million-year-old stone. The effect is hypnotic, a rhythmic pulsing of light that seems to follow the very heartbeat of the room. You can hear the quiet, collective sigh of the flames, the soft crackle of the wax as it drips into the holders, and the distant, muffled sound of the Russian winter pressing against the thick glass of the windows. Inside, however, there is a warmth that is both physical and spiritual. The scent of the heated amber rises into the air, a thick, balsamic perfume that fills the senses and transports the mind to a place of absolute stillness. In this hall of mirrors and gold, the boundaries of the room seem to dissolve. You are no longer standing between 4 walls, but in the center of a golden sun. The reflections create a sense of endless space, as if the Empress could walk forever through these glowing corridors without ever reaching the end. It is a masterpiece of light and shadow, where the dark corners are banished by the relentless brilliance of the mirrors. The flickering of the candles creates a sense of movement, as if the carved eagles and the floral garlands are swaying in a gentle, unseen breeze. This is the pinnacle of the Baroque spirit, a celebration of excess that somehow achieves a perfect shimmering harmony. The light is so intense that it feels as though it has weight, a golden pressure against the skin, a warmth that lingers long after the candles have been extinguished. Eventually, the time comes for the masterpiece to find its final, permanent home. The Empress Elizabeth chooses the Catherine Palace in Tsarskoye Selo, the Tsar's village, a place of immense beauty situated just outside the bustle of Saint Petersburg. The move is a monumental undertaking, a procession of beauty through the Russian countryside. The panels, now even larger and more fragile due to the additions of restorative, are once again packed with the utmost care. The air is filled with the scent of fresh hay and the rough, earthy smell of the linen wraps used to shield the amber from the dust. 75 elite guards are assigned to carry the panels, their boots thudding in a slow, rhythmic cadence against the ground. They move with a profound sense of responsibility, knowing that they carry the very soul of the empire in their hands. The journey to Tsarskoye Selo is shorter than the long trek from Berlin, but it is no less significant. As the procession enters the gates of the palace, the scent of the vast manicured gardens drifts through the air, a mixture of damp grass, blooming roses, and the cool, clean breath of the nearby lakes. The Catherine Palace, with its long sky-blue facade and its rows of golden Atlantes, seems to have been built specifically to house this treasure. The final installation in the designated hall is a quiet, intense affair. Rastrelli himself oversees the placement of every screw and every gilded frame. The sound of the amber panels sliding into their permanent positions is a series of soft, satisfying clicks, a locking of history into its final place. Once the last mirror is polished and the last candle is placed in its socket, the room finally rests. It has found its home. The air in the Catherine Palace chamber is still, heavy with the combined scents of the amber, the beeswax, and the distant perfume of the gardens. It is a sanctuary of ultimate beauty, a place where the history of 2 nations and the visions of 3 monarchs have finally merged into a single breathtaking reality. The sun filters through the high windows, casting long honey-coloured rectangles across the floor, and for a moment the world outside ceases to exist. There is only the silence, the warmth of the gold, and the lingering whisper of the Empress's vision, realized at last in the heart of the Tsar's village. The Amber Room has become the 8th wonder of the world, a testament to the power of a dream that began with a dusting of resin in a sculptor's workshop and ended in a palace of light and mirrors. The sun begins its slow and graceful descent over the gardens of Tsarskoye Selo, casting long, gilded fingers of light through the towering windows of the Catherine Palace. This is the hour when the Amber Room truly breathes, when the transition from daylight to dusk turns the chamber into a sanctuary of liquid gold. Within this radiant expanse, set like jewels into the glowing amber panels, are the 4 Florentine mosaics, masterpieces of the technique known as pietra dura. These are not mere decorations, but windows into the human experience, captured forever in the unyielding hardness of semi-precious stones. Each mosaic is a silent poem dedicated to the senses, a testament to the artisan's ability to make cold rock feel as soft as skin or as fleeting as a scent. As you step closer to the first mosaic, representing sight, you feel the coolness of the marble frame contrasting with the ambient warmth of the amber walls. The image is a marvel of perspective, crafted from slivers of lapis lazuli as blue as a midnight sky and jasper as variegated as a forest floor. You can almost hear the soft, rhythmic grinding of the lapidary's wheel as they shaped these stones to form the likeness of a grand architectural vista. The eyes of the figures within the stone seem to follow you, their pupils fashioned from obsidian that catches the flickering candlelight. To look upon this mosaic is to feel the weight of the gaze, the sharp clarity of vision, and the profound beauty of the world as it is perceived by the eye. The scent of the room, that heavy and ancient resin, seems to sharpen your focus, making every minute vein in the stone appear like a living artery. Next to it lies the allegory of hearing, a scene that captures the very essence of sound in a medium that is eternally silent. Here, the craftsman used the most delicate shades of agate and chalcedony to depict a lutanist lost in song. You can almost imagine the vibration of the strings, the low and woody hum of the instrument echoing through the golden chamber. The stones are arranged with such precision that the folds of the musician's garments seem to rustle with every shift in the light. To touch this mosaic is to feel the smooth, glass-like surface, yet your mind translates the image into the sound of a distant bird call or the hushed whisper of a summer breeze. It is a profound irony, a celebration of the ear fashioned from the silence of the earth's deep crust, and it fills the air with an invisible music that complements the crackle of the fireplace. Moving along the wall, your senses are drawn to the mosaic of taste and smell, which are often intertwined in these stone narratives. This panel is a riot of colour, featuring pomegranates bursting with seeds made of red carnelian and flowers with petals carved from the palest pink quartz. The scent of the room seems to intensify as you linger here, the resinous perfume of the amber blending with the imagined fragrance of the stone blossoms. You can almost feel the juice of the fruit on your tongue, the tart sweetness captured in the cold mineral. The artisans selected stones with natural gradients to mimic the ripening of a peach or the dew on a leaf, creating a tactile feast that requires no consumption. The texture under your fingertips is a map of hidden treasures, from the grain of the marble to the polished sheen of the emerald-colored malachite. Finally, you reach the mosaic of touch, perhaps the most intimate of the allegories. It depicts a simple yet profound moment, a figure reaching out to feel the prick of a thorn or the softness of a velvet cloth. In this scene, the stones are chosen for their textural suggestions, the rough-hewn bits of basalt contrasting with the silk-smooth finish of the onyx. As you stand before it, you are acutely aware of your own hands, the warmth of your skin against the static charge of the amber walls. This mosaic reminds us that the world is known through the reaching of fingers and the meeting of surfaces. The air in this corner of the room feels thicker, more tactile, as if the light itself has become something you could grasp and hold. Beyond the intricate stories of the mosaics, the walls themselves tell a deeper, more primal tale through their extraordinary palette and texture. The amber room is not a uniform yellow, but a living gradient that shifts and flows like a sunset caught in a permanent embrace. At the height of the panels, where the light from the upper windows first strikes, the amber is the color of lemon zest and clarified butter. This is the youngest looking stone, translucent and bright, allowing the light to pass through it with ease. When you run your hand over these sections, the surface feels exceptionally smooth, almost like polished bone, and it carries a faint, citrus-like sharpness in its scent. This pale amber represents the morning of the world, a clear and optimistic glow that lifts the spirit of anyone who enters. As your eyes travel downward, the color deepens into a rich, cloying honey. This is the classic heart of the room, a warm and inviting hue that seems to hold the very essence of the sun. The texture here is more complex, as these panels often contain the clouds and milks that occur naturally within the resin. You can feel the subtle variations in density under your palms, the way the stone transition from clear to opaque. In the candlelight, these honeyed sections seem to pulse with a slow, rhythmic energy. The scent here is deeper, more balsamic, reminding you of the sticky sap that once flowed from ancient pines 30 million years ago. It is a comforting maternal warmth that anchors the room in a sense of timeless peace. Further down still, the amber takes on the dark, sophisticated tones of aged cognac and burnt sugar. These pieces are often more fractured, their interiors filled with thousands of tiny glittering fissures that catch the light and scatter it like internal stars. The texture of these darker sections is slightly more resonant, a heavy and solid feel that speaks of the immense pressure of the earth and the salt of the sea. There is a profound depth to these colors, a richness that suggests the passage of eons. To look into a cognac-colored panel is to see into the shadows of history, where the light is trapped in a dense, beautiful amber web. The fragrance emanating from these sections is muskier, a dark and earthy perfume that lingers in the back of the throat. At the very base of the walls, and within the most intricate of the carved reliefs, the amber reaches its most dramatic expression, a deep, bruised cherry red. This is the rarest and most prized of the colors, a hue that suggests fire and blood and the deepest secrets of the forest. These stones are often almost opaque, their surfaces polished to a mirror-like shine that reflects the floorboards beneath. The texture is cool and dense, yet it retains that characteristic amber warmth that surprises the touch. These red stones provide the shadows and the definitions of the room, the outlines of the Prussian eagles and the deep recesses of the floral garlands. They are the bass notes in the room's visual symphony, a grounding force that gives the lighter ambers their brilliance. The entire surface of the room is a masterpiece of tactile variety. In some places, the amber is carved into delicate, paper-thin leaves that feel as though they might flutter if you breathed on them. In others, it is laid in thick, heavy slabs that possess the gravity of a cathedral wall. There are moments where you find a trapped fossil, a tiny gnat or a fragment of moss from a world that existed long before the first human walked the earth. To touch such a piece is to bridge a gap of 30 million years, to feel the tomb of a creature that saw a different sun. The room is a living entity, its scent changing as the temperature rises, its colors shifting as the clouds pass over the moon. It is a sanctuary of the golden hour, where every sense is catered to, and every texture tells a story of survival, beauty, and the enduring power of the earth's golden tears. Imagine, if you will, the deepest hours of a Russian evening during the long, tranquil reign of Catherine II. Outside the towering windows of the Catherine Palace, the world has been swallowed by a velvet darkness, and the gardens of Tsarskoye Selo are draped in a heavy, silent blanket of snow. But inside the amber room, the transition from day to night does not bring darkness. Instead, it brings a concentrated, intimate kind of radiance. This is the hour of the scholar and the dreamer, a time when the frantic energy of the court has settled into a profound hush. You are seated in a heavy armchair of carved walnut, the velvet upholstery feeling cool and soft against your skin. In front of you, a small circular table holds a single tall candle made of the finest ivory beeswax. The flame of the candle is a tiny flickering heartbeat, and as it dances in the subtle currents of the room, the amber walls begin to wake up. The light does not merely hit the surface of the stones, it sinks into them. You can see the glow traveling through the translucent layers of the resin, illuminating the clouds and sun spangles trapped within. It is as if the walls are breathing light, exhaling a soft orange-hued warmth that wraps around you like a heavy, invisible cloak. The scent of the room at this hour is hypnotic. The heat from the candle gently warms the nearby amber panels, releasing a more intense burst of that ancient balsamic perfume. It is a thick, sweet fragrance, carrying the memory of sun-drenched forests from 30 million years ago, now mingled with the clean, honeyed smell of the burning wax. In your hands, you hold a book bound in aged calfskin. The leather is cool and slightly textured, smelling of old libraries. Faint wood smoke and the bitter tang of iron gall ink. As you turn a page, the sound is a crisp, dry whisper that seems to echo in the stillness of the chamber. The paper is heavy and handmade, its edges slightly frayed, catching the golden light on its uneven surface. Reading in this sanctuary is not like reading anywhere else in the world. The amber walls act as a natural amplifier for the spirit of the text. When you read of ancient empires or philosophical truths, the golden surroundings seem to validate the words, providing a backdrop of timelessness and permanence. The shadows in the room are not dark or frightening. They are a deep, rich umber, softened by the reflections from the hundreds of polished amber facets. The carved figures on the walls, the delicate floral garlands, the majestic Prussian eagles, and the intricate scrolls appear to shift and move in the candlelight. A carved rose might seem to unfurl its petals as the flame flickers, or the eye of a golden eagle might suddenly catch a spark of light, appearing to watch over your shoulder with a silent, ancient wisdom. This is a place where the boundaries between the physical world and the world of the imagination become thin. The warmth of the amber, the scent of the resin, and the rhythmic sound of your own breathing create a trance-like state of focus. As you sit in this golden glow, you are acutely aware of the silence. It is not an empty silence, but a heavy, textured quiet that feels like a physical presence. It is the sound of time being held at bay. The distant ticking of a long case clock in a far-off gallery is the only reminder that the world outside is still moving. Here, in the heart of the amber, the minutes seem to stretch and expand, allowing you to lose yourself completely in the world of the book. The light from the candle creates a small, private universe around you, while the walls of the room serve as a golden barrier against the cold and the dark of the Russian night. You are a guest in a sanctuary of light, a place where the alchemy of fire and resin transforms the simple act of reading into a sacred ritual of peace and reflection. Beyond the threshold of the amber room, the Catherine Palace stretches out like a vast sleeping giant. To reach this sanctuary, one must traverse a series of grand galleries and long, echoing hallways where the air is noticeably cooler and the scent of the amber is replaced by the smell of cold marble, dry dust, and old floor wax. These corridors are the veins of the palace, but they are also its armor. The walls of the Catherine Palace are immense, built with a thickness that defies the passage of time and the harshness of the climate. They are constructed of heavy masonry and brick several feet deep, designed to insulate the royal inhabitants from the biting winds of the Baltic and the crushing weight of the winter snows. When you step from the hallway into the amber room and close the heavy gilded doors behind you, the change is instantaneous and profound. The thick walls act as a perfect acoustic filter. The howling of the wind against the palace eaves, which might be a roar in the outer gardens, is reduced here to a faint, rhythmic sigh that only serves to emphasize the warmth of the interior. The sounds of the palace, the distant clatter of a servant's footsteps on a stone floor, the muffled sound of a door closing in another wing, are completely swallowed by the density of the structure. You are encased in a fortress of silence, a place where the air feels still and protected. This sense of security is palpable. In the middle of the 19th century, as you stand in the center of the room, you can feel the sheer mass of the building surrounding you. It is a comforting weight, a reminder that you are held within a structure built to endure for centuries. The floor beneath your feet is made of intricate parquetry, the different woods, oak, walnut, mahogany, emitting a faint, earthy scent when warmed by the sun or the indoor heaters. There is no vibration from the outside world here. The thick walls absorb the tremors of passing carriages or the distant thunder of a summer storm, leaving the amber panels undisturbed in their golden repose. The silence of the amber room is its own kind of music. It is a silence that has been cultivated over generations, a quiet that has soaked into the very pores of the resin and the wood. It allows the senses to become hyper-attuned to the smallest details. You can hear the soft, internal tink of the amber as it subtly adjusts to a change in temperature, a sound like a tiny needle hitting glass. You can hear the low, steady hum of your own heart, a reminder of your life within this ancient, frozen forest. The thick walls do more than just provide physical safety. They provide a psychological sanctuary, a place where the pressures of the empire and the noise of history are momentarily silenced. In this space, the air is always a few degrees warmer, held steady by the insulating properties of the masonry and the natural heat retention of the amber itself. Even when the temperature outside drops to 30 degrees below zero and the trees in the park crack with the frost, the amber room remains a pocket of eternal autumn. The scent of the resin is constant, a deep and reassuring perfume that reminds you of the world's enduring beauty. You are safe here, tucked away behind meters of stone and a layer of 30-million-year-old gold. The peace of the room is a testament to the skill of the architects and the vision of the monarchs who created it. It is a place where the soul can rest, protected by the strength of the palace and the warmth of the dream, a golden haven in a world that is often cold and loud. As the night deepens and the candle in the reading nook finally flickers and dies, the room does not go completely dark. The faint silvery moonlight filters through the frost on the windows, turning the amber into a landscape of pale, ghostly gold. The silence remains absolute, protected by the thick, unyielding walls, a silent guardian of the masterpiece, until the sun rises once again to reignite the fire within the stone. The year is 1941, and the golden summer of Tsarskoye Selo is curdling into a season of shadow and ash. Outside the tall sky-blue walls of the Catherine Palace, the air is no longer filled with the scent of blooming roses and the gentle hum of bees. Instead, a heavy metallic tension hangs over the gardens, and the wind carries the distant low-frequency vibration of a war that is hungry for everything beautiful. Inside the amber room, the atmosphere has shifted from a sanctuary of peace to a tomb of frantic, whispered desperation. The museum curators, led by the devoted Anatoly Kuchumov, move with a ghostly quietness, their faces etched with the exhaustion of 1,000 sleepless nights. They know that the gold of the North is in mortal peril. The initial plan had been to dismantle the room and send it deep into the safety of the Ural Mountains, but the cruel reality of time has betrayed them. As they carefully attempted to pry the first few pieces from the walls, the amber, aged and brittle from centuries of holding the sun, began to splinter and crumble like the wings of a dried moth. The sound of that first tiny crack was like a gunshot in the silence of the gallery, a heartbreaking signal that the room could not be moved. And so, a new, desperate strategy is born. If the room cannot be moved, it must be erased. It must be hidden in plain sight, swallowed by a shroud of paper and cloth. Imagine the scene in those final, frantic days of June and July. The air in the chamber is thick with the smell of flour and water as the staff boils great pots of starch paste. It is a humble domestic smell, reminiscent of a kitchen, yet here it is the scent of a desperate defense. The curators move with trembling hands, carrying long rolls of coarse grey gauze and stacks of ordinary, unadorned wallpaper. They begin the agonizing task of covering the eighth wonder of the world. The process is slow and rhythmic, a funereal dance of preservation. First, they apply the rough gauze. You can hear the dry, scratchy sound of the fabric being smoothed over the intricate amber carvings. The gauze catches on the delicate petals of the amber flowers and the sharp beaks of the Prussian eagles, a soft, snagging noise that feels like a wound. Then comes the paste, cold and sticky, applied with wide brushes that make a wet, slapping sound against the stone. One by one, the glowing panels are smothered. As the first strips of grey wallpaper are pressed into the paste, the light in the room begins to die. You can see the golden glow fighting to shine through the thin paper, a faint, ghostly orange that eventually fades into a dull, flat grey. The mirrors, which once multiplied the light of 1,000 candles, are covered with heavy plywood, their silvered surfaces blinded. The room, which for centuries had been a vessel for the sun, is being transformed into a nondescript hollow box. The scent of the resin is slowly replaced by the damp, sour smell of the drying glue, and the dusty, stale aroma of the cheap paper. By the time they are finished, the amber room has vanished, replaced by a silent grey ghost of itself, a secret hidden behind a veil of mediocrity. But the silence does not last. The year 1940 moves into its colder months, and the grey shroud is not enough to deter the encroaching storm. By September, the gardens of Tsarskoye Selo are no longer a place of rest, but a battlefield. The air is filled with the acrid, choking smell of diesel exhaust, burnt gunpowder, and the heavy sulphurous stench of nearby explosions. The thick masonry of the palace shudders with every impact, a deep, bone-rattling vibration that threatens to shake the hidden amber from its wooden frame. And then the doors of the palace are burst open. The sound of the Russian defenders' retreat is replaced by a new, harsh symphony. It is the rhythmic, heavy thud of jackboots on the intricate parquetry floors, a sound of conquest that shows no respect for the sanctity of the space. The German soldiers enter the amber room, their breath visible in the cooling air of the unheated palace. Among them are the specialists of the Kunstschutz, the unit tasked with the protection and seizure of art. They are not fooled by the grey wallpaper and the layers of gauze. They know exactly what lies beneath the paper shroud. The order is given, and the systematic destruction of the room begins. The atmosphere of the sanctuary is shattered by the sharp, metallic clatter of tools. You can hear the rhythmic, aggressive strike of hammers against chisels, a cold, ringing sound that echoes off the vaulted ceilings. The soldiers work with a professional, clinical efficiency, but the material they are handling is not clinical. It is the life's work of generations, and it is protesting. As the chisels bite into the wood and the stone, the amber begins to cry out. You can hear the sharp, agonizing tink of the resin as it snaps under the pressure. The sound is like breaking glass, a series of high-pitched fractures that signal the loss of a masterpiece. The wallpaper and gauze are torn away in ragged strips. The sound of the paper ripping like a scream in the quiet room. The golden panels are exposed once again, but they are no longer a sanctuary. They are pieces of a puzzle being forcibly solved. The smell of the room changes once more. The damp smell of the glue is replaced by the sharp, metallic scent of the tools and the cold, biting smell of the winter air rushing in through broken windows. The soldiers' uniforms smell of wool, sweat, and the grease of their weapons, a jarring intrusion into the resinous soul of the chamber. For 36 hours, the clatter of tools never ceases. The soldiers work in shifts, their movements illuminated by harsh, portable electric lamps that cast long, distorted shadows against the walls. The panels are pried loose one by one. You can hear the heavy, grinding groan of the wood as it is separated from the masonry, a sound of structural failure. Each piece is lowered onto the floor with a dull, heavy thud, the vibration rattling the remaining stones. The 4 Florentine mosaics, those silent allegories of the senses, are pried from their settings, their marble frames cracking under the strain. The sense of sight, hearing, taste, and touch are all being methodically extinguished. The 18 oak crates from the time of Peter the Great are gone, replaced by new utilitarian boxes of rough pine. These crates are lined with wood shavings that smell of fresh sap, a mockery of the ancient resin they are meant to hold. As the amber panels are slid into the boxes, the sound of the shavings rustling is like a dry, mocking whisper. The soldiers hammer the lids shut with a finality that feels like the closing of a coffin. The sound of the nails being driven into the wood is a series of sharp, rhythmic reports that mark the end of the room's long residence in the Catherine Palace. The crates are then dragged across the floors, the sound of the wood scraping against the parquetry a long, mournful shriek. When the last crate is removed, the room is left in a state of absolute hollow desolation. The walls are no longer golden, they are scarred, grey and bare, showing the rough brick and the broken wooden slats of the framework. The air is cold and empty, the scent of the amber gone, replaced only by the smell of dust and the lingering metallic tang of the tools. The silence that follows is not the peaceful hush of a sanctuary, but the deafening void of a theft. The sun has been stolen from the heart of Russia, packed into wooden boxes and hauled away into the darkness of a collapsing world. The jackboots fade into the distance, their rhythmic thudding replaced by the mournful whistle of the wind through the empty, stripped gallery. The amber room, once the pride of emperors and the dream of alchemists, has become a ghost, a memory of light carried away into the fog of war. The heavy, iron-bound crates have returned at last to the soil from which their treasure first sprang, but the homecoming is far from joyful. It is the autumn of 1941, and the city of Königsberg, the ancient heart of Prussia, sits huddled against the grey and churning waters of the Baltic Sea. The air here is sharp, laden with the smell of salt spray, cold fish, and the damp, heavy scent of old stone. High above the city, the Königsberg castle stands like a jagged crown of granite and brick, its towers reaching into a sky that is often the colour of a bruised plum. Within these walls, in the museum directed by Dr. Alfred Rode, the stolen panels of the amber room are once again brought out into the light. The sound of the crates being pried open echoes through the high, vaulted galleries, a hollow and rhythmic wooden groaning that seems to disturb the ghosts of the Teutonic knights who once walked these halls. Dr. Rode moves through the museum with a quiet, obsessive intensity, his footsteps a soft, dry scuffle against the stone floors. He is a man who loves the amber with a passion that borders on the religious, and as he oversees the reassembly of the room in the castle's third-floor gallery, his hands tremble with a mixture of awe and exhaustion. The air in the gallery is thick with the scent of the Baltic harbour, a sharp contrast to the sweet, flowery air of the Catherine Palace. Here, the amber seems to take on a different character. In the thin northern light that filters through the narrow castle windows, the stones do not glow with the same exuberant warmth they possessed in Russia. Instead, they seem more reflective, more sombre, as if the resin itself knows it has been taken as a prisoner of war. You can hear the rhythmic metallic click of the specialized tools as the panels are fitted into their new, smaller frames. Because the gallery in Königsberg is smaller than the grand hall in Tsarskoye Selo, the room is not fully realized. It is a cramped, condensed version of itself, a golden cage built within a fortress of stone. This is the last time the world will truly see the amber room in its full, shimmering glory. For a few brief years, a select few are allowed to walk within its golden embrace. The smell of the room remains that deep, ancient perfume of 30 million years, a scent that seems to defy the smell of the war-torn world outside. Visitors speak of the way the light from the silver candelabras dances across the honey-colored surfaces, creating a flickering, hypnotic world that makes one forget the sirens and the distant rumble of the front lines. The texture of the amber under the touch of Dr. Rhodes' silk gloves is smooth and cool, yet it still holds that phantom heat, that static memory of the sun. The 4 Florentine mosaics, though slightly chipped from their violent journey, still watch over the room with their silent, stony eyes. Sight, hearing, taste, and touch. They are the last witnesses to a brilliance that is about to be swallowed by the dark. The transition from brilliance to shadow begins in the late summer of 1944. The sky over Königsberg is no longer just a canvas for the Baltic clouds. It has become a highway for death. In August of that year, the British Royal Air Force arrives in the dead of night. The silence of the city is shattered by the low, bone-shaking hum of hundreds of heavy bombers, a sound that vibrates in the very marrow of the castle's stones. Then comes the whistling scream of the incendiaries. The air is suddenly filled with the terrifying chemical smell of phosphorus and the acrid, choking stench of burning timber. The castle, which had stood for 700 years, becomes a giant flaming torch. Inside the museum, the heat rises with a terrifying speed. Imagine the sound of the fire as it reaches the 3rd floor. It is a rhythmic, hungry roar, punctuated by the sharp crack of ancient oak beams snapping like dry twigs. The amber room, made of a material that is essentially a fossilized fuel, is in mortal danger. Amber does not just burn, it melts and ignites with a fierce, white-hot intensity. When amber catches fire, it releases a scent that is both beautiful and tragic. It smells like the finest frankincense and myrrh, a sweet, heavy smoke that fills the burning galleries with the fragrance of an ancient cathedral. Dr. Rode, in a frantic and desperate move, orders the room to be dismantled once again. In the heat and the smoke, with the ceiling groaning above them, the workers labor to pull the panels from the walls. You can hear the frantic, rhythmic clinking of their tools against the backdrop of the inferno. The panels are rushed down into the deep, damp cellars of the castle, far beneath the reach of the flames. The basements of Königsberg Castle are a labyrinth of shadows and cold, dripping moisture. The air here smells of wet earth, rotting wood, and the stale metallic tang of stagnant water. It is a place where the sun has never reached, a world of absolute heavy silence. The amber panels are stacked in these dark limestone vaults, wrapped in damp burlap to protect them from the heat above. The transition is absolute. The room has gone from a palace of light to a tomb of mud. For months the crates sit in the darkness. The only sound, the slow, rhythmic drip of water from the ceiling hitting the stone floor. Dr. Rode visits them with a guttering candle, the flame casting long, distorted shadows of the crates against the damp walls. He is the last guardian of the secret, a man holding a flickering light in a world that is rapidly being extinguished. By early 1945, the Red Army is at the gates of the city. The air in Königsberg is thick with the smell of cordite, ash, and the frozen breath of a city in its final agony. The castle is subjected to a relentless artillery bombardment, the heavy shells turning the stone walls into piles of rubble. Amidst the chaos of the final siege, the amber room vanishes into the labyrinth of history. There are stories of heavy trucks moving through the ruins in the dead of night, their engines muffled by the snow. There are whispers of secret tunnels leading from the castle to the harbour, of crates being loaded onto ships that would never reach their destination. There are even darker theories that the room never left the cellars, that it was crushed beneath the collapsing towers of the castle and buried under thousands of tons of burning debris. As the city falls and the smoke begins to clear, the silence that settles over the ruins of the castle is profound. The Soviet search teams, led by the same Anatoly Kuchumov, who had tried to hide the room in Russia, find only empty vaults and the scorched remains of a few decorative mouldings. The air in the cellars is cold and empty, the scent of the amber gone, replaced by the smell of wet soot and the bitter tang of lime. The eighth wonder of the world has become a ghost. It exists now only in the memories of those who saw it, in the grainy black and white photographs of Dr. Rode's archive, and in the persistent, haunting legends that continue to draw searchers to the dark corners of the world. The Disappearance is a masterpiece of ambiguity. Did the amber burn in the Great Fire, its essence ascending to the sky in a final, fragrant cloud of smoke? Is it sitting in a forgotten salt mine deep beneath the German countryside, the honeyed panels slowly succumbing to the damp and the salt? Or does it remain beneath the very ground of what was once Königsberg, a golden treasure hidden in a labyrinth of collapsed tunnels and forgotten rooms? The silence of the castle ruins provides no answers. The wind from the Baltic Sea continues to whistle through the empty spaces where the walls once stood, carrying the scent of the salt and the cold, but the sweet, resinous perfume of the amber is nowhere to be found. The long journey that began in a sculptor's workshop in Berlin has ended in a mystery that shows no sign of yielding its secrets. The room of light has stepped into the shadows, leaving the world to wonder if the sun will ever rise again on those 30-million-year-old stones. The smoke of the great conflict has long since cleared, leaving behind a world that is quieter, perhaps a little colder, and haunted by the ghosts of what was lost. In the decades that follow the year 1945, a new kind of soldier emerges in the shadows of the old European borders. These are the Seekers, the men and women possessed by the legend of the Golden Walls, driven by a hunger that transcends mere greed. They move through the landscape like silent investigators of a crime that has no end. The air in their world is thick with the scent of damp earth, wet limestone, and the sharp metallic tang of oxidized iron. You can hear the rhythmic, high-pitched ping of metal detectors sweeping over the forest floors of Thuringia and the jagged coastlines of the Baltic, a sound that breaks the stillness like the pulse of a mechanical heart. Imagine the descent into the salt mines of central Germany, those vast subterranean cathedrals carved from the very bones of the earth. As the heavy industrial elevators creak and groan their way down into the darkness, the air becomes thick and heavy, tasting of ancient salt and a dry mineral dust that coats the back of the throat. The sound of the descent is a series of low metallic thuds and the rushing of air through the narrow shafts. Once at the bottom, the silence is absolute, a weight that presses against the eardrums. The treasure hunters move through these salt galleries with their flashlights cutting through the gloom, the beams reflecting off the crystalline walls in a way that cruelly mimics the glow of amber. The smell here is sharp and sterile, a frozen scent of millions of years of geological time. They tap against the hollow-sounding sections of the walls, the rhythmic thack of their hammers echoing into the infinite dark. Every boarded-up tunnel and every collapsed ceiling is a promise, a secret waiting to be whispered. They dig through the loose shale and the white salt crust, their fingers becoming raw and stained, fueled by the hope that behind the next wall of rock lies the 18 oak crates, untouched and shimmering in the dark. From the dry, suffocating depths of the mines, the search moves to the suffocating depths of the water. There are lakes in the high, misty mountains of Austria and hidden lagoons along the Prussian coast, where the water is as dark as ink and as cold as the grave. The air at the surface is thin and crisp, smelling of pine needles and the damp, peaty scent of the shoreline. But beneath the surface, there is only a world of green-grey shadows and a crushing, silent pressure. The divers move with a slow, weightless grace, their breathing a rhythmic, mechanical hiss in their regulators. The sound of the bubbles rising to the surface is a soft, effervescent churn. Down in the silt, where the light of the sun has never reached, they run their gloved hands over the rotting hulls of sunken ships and the silt-covered remains of forgotten trucks. The texture of the lake bottom is a soft, cloying slime that feels like wet velvet, swallowing everything it touches. They search for the hard, unyielding corners of a crate, for a glimpse of a gilded frame through the murky depths. But the water is a jealous guardian, holding its secrets in a cold, watery embrace, and often the only thing they find is the rusted skeleton of a weapon or the empty, barnacle-encrusted shell of a dream. The search is a labor of infinite patience, a journey through a landscape of rumors and half-truths. Every few years a new map appears, a diary is found in a dusty attic, or a deathbed confession reignites the fire. The air in the archives where they study these maps is thick with the smell of old parchment, dry ink, and the slightly sweet, musty aroma of decomposing paper. You can hear the rhythmic, delicate rustle of pages being turned, a sound like the wings of a moth. They trace the paths of the phantom trucks through the snow-choked forests of 1945, their fingers moving over the faded lines of old military topographies. It is a search for a light that was stolen in the night, a quest to reclaim a piece of the sun that the shadows of war have swallowed whole. As the years turn into decades, a more persistent and haunting theory begins to take root in the minds of the seekers. It is the theory of the hidden bunker, a fortress of concrete and steel buried so deep beneath a nameless German hillside that the world above has forgotten its very existence. Imagine a place where the air has not moved for 80 years, a space where time has been held in a state of suspended animation. To reach such a place, one must bypass layers of reinforced masonry that smell of cold lime and damp earth. The silence within this hypothetical tomb is not just the absence of sound, it is a profound, suffocating presence, a hush that feels as thick as the concrete walls themselves. In this hidden sanctuary, the 18th wonder of the world would sit in absolute darkness. The air would be thin and stale, carrying the faint metallic scent of ozone and the lingering ghostly perfume of the amber itself, trapped in a confined space for generations. Imagine the dust. It would not be the light, dancing dust of a sunlit room, but a heavy grey shroud that has settled with a glacial slowness over every surface. It would coat the oak crates in a velvet layer, muffling any sound and softening every edge. If one were to step into this room, the sound of a footfall on the concrete floor would be a jarring, explosive event, a violation of a century of stillness. The dust would rise in slow, swirling clouds, catching the light of a single flashlight and turning the air into a shimmering grey fog. In this theory, the amber room remains perfect and untarnished, a golden secret protected by the very earth that birthed the resin millions of years ago. The walls of the bunker would be cold to the touch, sweating with a slow rhythmic condensation that drips onto the floor with a sound like a ticking clock. But the amber inside the crates would be warm, holding onto its static energy and its inner fire, waiting for the hand that will finally lift the lid. The seekers imagine the moment of discovery, the sound of the iron pry bar groaning against the rusted nails, a sharp and rhythmic creak snap that echoes through the bunker. They imagine the first ray of light hitting the panels after a lifetime of darkness, the way the honey and cognac colours would suddenly ignite, turning the grey, dusty tomb into a cathedral of gold. But for now, the bunker remains a ghost, a phantom architecture built of hope and obsession. The silence of the German hillsides is unbroken, and the dust continues to settle in the dark corners of the world's imagination. The scent of the amber is a memory, a lingering fragrance in the air that taunts those who seek it. The search is a rhythmic cycle of excitement and disappointment, a heartbeat that continues to pulse in the quiet archives and the damp mines. Every lead that goes cold, every empty vault that is opened, only adds to the mystery, making the treasure seem even more ethereal and unattainable. The amber room has become more than just a physical object. It is a symbol of the lost beauty of a vanished world, a golden dream that refuses to die. The seekers continue their work, their movements guided by the whisper of history and the scent of the ancient forest. They dig, they dive, and they dream, their lives defined by the absence of the light they crave. The air around them is always filled with the possibility of discovery, a tension that hums in the silence of the search. And somewhere, perhaps in a salt-crusted gallery or a concrete-lined vault, the 30-million-year-old resin sits in the dark, its balsamic perfume a silent prayer for the morning. The eternal search goes on, a rhythmic, slow-motion dance between the seekers and the shadows, while the dust continues to fall, grain by grain, in the hidden places where the sun has been forgotten. It is a story without an ending, a golden thread woven into the dark tapestry of the 20th century, waiting for the day when the silence will finally be broken and the treasure will return to the light. The year is 1979, and within the quiet, guarded workshops of the Catherine Palace, a new kind of silence has taken root. It is not the silence of a tomb, nor the silence of a forgotten ruin, but the focused, vibrating silence of a rebirth. The air in these specialized studios is thick and heavy, saturated with a scent that has not been smelled in these halls for nearly 4 decades. It is the deep, resinous perfume of the north, the sweet and ancient fragrance of raw amber being awakened by the touch of human hands. As the master craftsmen of the newly formed amber workshop begin their monumental task, the world outside continues its frantic pace, but here time has slowed to a crawl. They are embarking on a journey that will span 24 years, a labor of love and obsession that seeks to do the impossible, to summon a ghost back into the world of the living. Imagine the sound that fills this workshop every day for more than 2 decades. It is a soft, rhythmic humming, the sound of small, diamond-tipped drills and delicate files grazing the surface of the resin. This sound is the heartbeat of the reconstruction. As the tools bite into the stones, a fine golden dust rises into the air, swirling in the shafts of sunlight that filter through the high windows. This dust is everywhere. It settles on the eyelashes of the artisans, it coats their heavy aprons in a velvet powder, and it finds its way into the very pores of their skin. They breathe the amber, they smell it, and eventually they begin to look like the material itself, their hands polished by the constant friction until they glow with a faint, translucent sheen. There is a profound sensory intimacy in this work. Each artisan must learn the temperament of the stone, feeling for the hidden fissures and the internal clouds that dictate where a cut can be made. The amber is brittle, a 30-million-year-old memory that can shatter with a single misplaced stroke, and so every movement is deliberate, slow, and infused with a terrifying level of care. The materials for this resurrection come from the vast open-pit mines of Königsberg, the same shores that provided the gold for the Prussian kings and the Russian empresses. Tons upon tons of raw amber are brought into the workshop, sorted with a patience that defies modern understanding. You can hear the rhythmic clatter of the stones being poured onto wooden tables, a sound like falling coins or dry ancient seeds. The craftsmen seek out the perfect matches in color and transparency, hunting for that specific lemon yellow, that deep cognac orange, and the rare, bruised cherry red that defined the original panels. To recreate a single square meter of the wall requires thousands of individual pieces, each one hand-cut, hand-polished, and fitted into a mosaic so seamless that it appears to have grown naturally from the earth. The smell of the workshop during the winter months is particularly evocative, as the indoor heaters warm the stockpiles of resin, releasing a thick, balsamic aroma that makes the air feel heavy and nourishing. The technical challenges are staggering. The artisans have only black and white photographs from the era of Dr. Rode, and a few salvaged fragments of the original carvings to guide them. They must reinvent the lost techniques of the 18th century, rediscovering how to tint the amber using heat and honey, and how to back the translucent panels with silver foil to create that internal pulsing glow. The sound of the silver foil being crinkled is a delicate metallic whisper, a sharp contrast to the organic thud of the amber slabs. They work on the 4 Florentine mosaics with a focus that borders on the religious, using the same stones, lapis lazuli, jasper, onyx, that the Italian masters used centuries ago. The sound of the lapidary wheels grinding the hard stones is a low, steady drone that provides the bass note to the workshop symphony. For 24 years, this cycle continues. Children are born and grow to adulthood, regimes rise and fall, and the world changes beyond recognition. But within these walls, the only thing that matters is the next stone, the next carving, and the slow, inevitable return of the light. The year is 2003, and the city of Saint Petersburg is preparing to celebrate its 300th anniversary. The air in Tsarskoye Selo is crisp and clear, carrying the scent of the spring thaw and the damp, earthy promise of the surrounding forests. Inside the Catherine Palace, the atmosphere is electric, a high-frequency vibration of anticipation that seems to make the very floorboards hum. The 24 years of labor are reaching their crescendo. The long, empty gallery that once held the scarred remains of the stolen masterpiece is now a hive of quiet activity. The reconstructed panels, massive and glowing with an inner fire, are finally being brought home. The installation is a ritual of profound significance. You can hear the heavy, rhythmic thud of the guards' boots as they carry the crates into the hall, a sound that echoes the arrival of the 18 oak boxes in the time of Peter the Great. But this time, the feeling is one of restoration rather than departure. As the first panel is lifted toward the wall, the silence in the room is absolute. You can hear the soft, rhythmic breathing of the master craftsmen who have spent their entire adult lives preparing for this moment. The sound of the panels sliding into their new permanent frames is a series of deep, satisfying clicks, the sound of history finally snapping back into place. Each panel is fitted with a precision that allows no room for error, a seamless marriage of modern engineering and ancient art. As the final piece is secured and the protective cloths are pulled away, the effect is overwhelming. The sun, dipping low in the Russian sky, sends its last rays through the tall windows, and the room ignites. It is as if a heart that has been still for 60 years has suddenly begun to beat again. The walls do not merely reflect the light, they drink it in and exhale it as a warm, honey-coloured radiance that fills every corner of the chamber. The mirrors, once again vast and clear, catch the glow and multiply it into infinity, creating a world of golden corridors that stretch toward the horizon. The scent of the room is intoxicating. The fresh gilding, the polished wood of the parquetry, and the massive, overwhelming perfume of the new amber create an atmosphere that is both regal and primordial. It is the scent of a forest that has been resurrected, a fragrance of 30 million years of sun captured and held within a modern palace. The 4 Florentine mosaics, sight, hearing, taste and touch, look out from their golden settings once more. They have been reborn with such fidelity that they seem to possess the same memories as the originals. The allegories of the senses are finally home in a room that caters to every one of them. The warmth of the amber is palpable, a static living heat that can be felt even without touching the walls. The sound of the room is a dense, protective silence, a hush that feels like a benediction. On the day of the grand unveiling, as the heads of state and the descendants of the Romanovs walk through the doors, the air is filled with the soft rustle of silk and the hushed murmurs of wonder. But the true masters of the moment are the craftsmen, the men and women with the amber-stained hands, who stand quietly in the shadows, watching the light dance across the surfaces they have polished for 24 years. The circle has closed. The dream that began in a sculptor's workshop in Berlin, that travelled through the frozen wastes on a sledge, that was hidden behind wallpaper and stolen in the night, has returned to the light. The amber room is no longer a ghost or a mystery. It is a physical reality, a monument to the endurance of beauty and the stubbornness of the human spirit. The light of the sun, trapped in the resin of ancient trees, has found its way back to the walls of the Catherine Palace. As the candles are lit for the first time in the finished room, the scent of the beeswax and the amber rises in a final, triumphant cloud of fragrance. The shadows are banished, the silence is at peace, and the 8th wonder of the world stands once more in its golden glory, a sanctuary of light that will whisper its secrets to the generations yet to come. The alchemy is complete, and the sun has finally come home. The golden light of the amber fades as we gently close the heavy cover of our book. The secrets of the lost chamber are tucked away, safe within these shelves. You are here, in the quiet of the library. The story is over, and your journey into rest begins. There is nothing left to reach for, nothing left to do, but drift. You are so very safe. If you wish to find your way back to these silent halls tomorrow night, perhaps leave a mark, a like or a subscription to ensure your path is always lit. Sleep now. Deep, heavy sleep. Good night.